All right, first order of business, I've got one spot open for the premium SMT newsletter. If you want to take that spot, shoot me an email. Put my email in the description below. So I want to take a look mostly at the currencies and then correlate how that might relate to metals. So this is the euro. I think the euro formed a 3-year cycle low right here back in September, and this is the initial rally out of that 3-year cycle low. It appears at this time anyway, it appears that this was the move down into the first intermediate cycle low during this multi-year cycle rally. It looks to me like this bottomed on week 23, which would be right in the middle of the normal timing band for an intermediate cycle to bottom. As of today anyway, the euro is trading back above this 10-week moving average, and this is one of the tools I use to tell me, it doesn't work all the time, but it's a good rule of thumb. If price is above the 10-week moving average, you're usually in the advancing phase of an intermediate cycle. If it's below the 10-week moving average, you're in the declining phase of the intermediate cycle. So price has recovered this 10-week moving average. You can see the RSI on the weekly chart got down to oversold, bounced quickly. That's exactly what you would expect to happen during the advancing phase of a 3-year cycle. You would expect oversold conditions to be bought quickly, and that's what's happened. So it looks to me like this is the euro has completed its first intermediate cycle and is now starting the advancing phase of another of its second intermediate cycle embedded within that larger 3-year cycle. Now let me go over to the dollar. Okay, so the first thing to notice here on the dollar chart is this semi-parabolic rally here as the Fed started jacking up interest rates. If the euro completed a 3-year cycle low, then this is a 3-year cycle top in the dollar. And the 3-year cycle isn't due to bottom until spring or summer, maybe even as late as fall of 2024. So we got a lot of months still before we would expect another major bottom like we got back here. This was a 3-year cycle low. This was a 3-year cycle low. So we got another one of these that's due out here in 24. And the problem is that this decline is coming off of at least I would call it a semi-parabolic move. And so kind of a semi-bubble, I guess I would call it. And the bubble is in the process of imploding. And so let me zoom in here a little bit. Oh, and before I do that, I might mention that generally when price gets stretched extremely far above or below the mean, then you'll get a regression event. That's what's happening here in the dollar. But usually these are regression events, don't just come down to the mean and then they start back up again. So you would expect with a stretch that's this far above the 200-day or 200-week moving average that price is going to drop considerably below that moving average before we get that final 3-year cycle low out here sometime in 24. All right, now let me zoom in. All right, so and we've kind of got the mirror image in the dollar that we did in the euro. We've got a cycle that appears to have rallied for 5 weeks and then printed a reversal candle. And now the dollar isn't below this 10-week moving average, but it's threatening. We've also got a tag of the overbought condition on the weekly RSI and a quick reversal. Again, exactly what you would expect to happen if the dollar is in the declining phase of its 3-year cycle, which it sure looks like it is. And then you would expect these intermediate cycles to left translate. And by that I mean they would tend to top in, let's call it 12 weeks or less, and it's starting to look like this one may have topped on week 5. And then you would also expect those cycles to fail. And by fail, I mean eventually price will drop below the pivot of the previous cycle of the same magnitude. So this was an intermediate cycle low. A failed intermediate cycle would be a cycle that comes down and then breaks below this low. So is stair-stepping down. And you would expect that to happen in the declining phase of this 3-year cycle. So the odds are starting to look like the dollar has probably completed an intermediate top, and the euro has probably completed an intermediate bottom, and then that's going to be a driver for gold. So now let me look at gold. All right, now here's the gold cycle. This is also weekly. You can see gold was moving down into an intermediate, I think, intermediate cycle low, but it has recovered and recovered the 10-week moving average. You can see we got that same look here. RSI got down, didn't even quite get to oversold, which is would be an indication of an extremely strong market that can't even fully push the RSI into oversold during an intermediate decline. Now let me go to the daily chart and then let me show you the conflict I have. All right, so this was our intermediate cycle low. There's no question about that. There's nothing on this chart that would indicate that this is anything other than just one daily cycle. And it almost never happens that you just get one daily cycle embedded within an intermediate, a longer or larger intermediate cycle. You almost always have at least two. So I was pretty skeptical about trying to call this as a final intermediate cycle low. I was looking for one more rally, and it still may happen, but it's becoming less likely, I think. But I was looking for one more daily cycle, a second daily cycle that would rally and maybe get overbought and then immediately turn back down and eventually come down and break this pivot and give us a more normal intermediate decline, one that lasts a little bit longer than this was 17 weeks. Usually like to see, I usually don't want to try and call a intermediate bottom earlier than 20 weeks. Usually 20 to 25 weeks is about normal. So this, until 3 days ago, this just still looked like probably a second daily cycle that was going to rally for a little bit and then going to roll over and come down and make a lower low. And like I said, it's still possible that could happen, but based on what's happening in the currencies and based on this follow-through day here, I think the trouble in the financial sector that has popped up here in the last several days may have put a top in the dollar, a bottom in the euro, and it may cause gold to form an intermediate cycle low with just one daily cycle. So on Monday, when I started to see this follow through here, that was the indication, along with the collapse of SVB and I think Signature Bank in New York. That was the bell ringing that I needed to switch gears. And at that point, I didn't really want to stubbornly remain in the camp that this was going to roll over and give us a second daily cycle down. At that point, I think there was a big fundamental change in the market, and that's the point at which I suggested that traders go ahead and get back in and then just put a stop right below this pivot. Now, let me go over to minor. So for the mining sector, if you got in Monday morning, you got in right here, and you're not really chasing here because this is only day 2 of a new. This is a new daily cycle, and it may be a new intermediate cycle. If it's a new intermediate cycle, then we got weeks and weeks to run yet. So this is not. If you bought on my recommendation Monday, you're not chasing. You may have gotten in, about as close as you can get. Other than day 1, which you can see this would have been day 1 here, but this was a very bearish looking reversal. Pretty hard to buy that in anticipation that price is going to reverse again the next day. But that was when the banking crisis intensified the next day, and gold confirmed. So once we got that confirmation, that's where we entered. And so at this point, we're into positions. And we've got to stop below here just in case this does roll over and give us that second daily cycle down. But like I said, it's looking pretty iffy at this point as to whether that's going to happen. I'm kind of more thinking that the odds are starting to favor that we actually did just get an intermediate cycle that only had one daily cycle embedded within it. And the reason for that is because that crisis popped up in the financial markets, and when you get a news-driven or a serious fundamental change in the markets, then cycles and technicals and put call level, none of that stuff's going to work because you've had a fundamental shift in the market, and that just takes precedent over any other tools that you're going to try and use. So Monday morning I recognized that there was likely a fundamental shift in the market, and at that point, I'm willing to give this the benefit of the doubt, and I think there's a very good chance that gold may be in the advancing phase of a new intermediate cycle. And if that is the case, then gold is going to come up here. It's going to break out above this pivot. We're going to test 2,000. Guarantee this cartel is going to attack it at 2,000. They're going to try and stop gold from getting above 2,000. But any test of 2,000 this early in a new intermediate cycle means that the cartel is they're going to fail, and they're going to get their teeth kicked in with shorts trying to stop this at 2,000. It's not going to work. It'll be too early in the intermediate cycle for them to be able to stop price, other than temporarily. And then after that, it's on to the all-time highs, up here at about let's just call it 2080 or so. And again, especially if gold can break through this 2,000 during this first daily cycle and test these all-time highs, then we're going to get our breakout. And as most of you know, this is the handle of just a huge cup and handle pattern, and a consolidation phase that big is going to power a massive move. And I'll go on record and say that 5,000 is going to be a piece of cake, and 10,000 is probably likely on any breakout from a pattern this large. So, I'm going to give this the benefit of the doubt. I think the fundamentals have shifted, and shifted radically. And I think we are setting, metals are setting pretty good for a test of 2,000 and maybe a test of the all-time highs during this first daily cycle. And if that happens, then we're going to get our breakout, and the bubble phase in gold will have begun. All right, so again, I've got a couple spots open if you want to get into the premium newsletter. Give me an email. I'll put my email address in the description below.